Hey guys, I'm here to do lesson 7.5 with you. Your learning target for today's lesson is I will be able to solve one-step equations. Your think about it says, represent and solve each equation below using a model. So you have 22 equals n plus 17. You have 35 equals 5 times m. You have p minus 19 equals 34. And then you have 45 divided by x equals 5. So remember, I'm going to give you a hint on subtraction problems and on division problems. Be careful with what you say your total is. Okay, remember when we talked about division, your total is going to be your dividend. That's the number you're dividing. Okay, so think about what number that is there. And then for subtraction, it's always what you start with. That's your total. Okay, so keep that in mind and go ahead and pause the video, see if you can solve it on your own. All right, guys, we're back here to do it together. I'm going to go ahead and model these, but I'm going to do it fairly quickly, just so we can move on to the bulk of our lesson, just because we get some more practice with the weird models that we had yesterday, where we had like n amount of groups, or our variable was our number of groups. So it was kind of a weird model. So let's get started. For this first one, our total on the addition problem is always just the number that's by itself next to the equal sign. So whichever side that might be on. Okay, so we need to draw two models because of the equal sign. One is going to be represented by 22. All right, then we have our parts, since it's an addition problem. So I'm going to draw that second model equal in length because of the equal sign. I'm going to separate it into two parts. We're going to label one side n and the other side 17. So we know the total, and now we know the one of the parts. So we're going to use that information. Since we have the total, we're going to take away the part we know from that total. So we're going to do 22 minus the part we know. Okay, I can't take 7 away from 2, so I have to borrow. This turns into 1, and this turns into 12. 12 minus 7 is 5. 1 minus 1 is 0. So n here is going to equal 5. Okay, you check your work by plugging in to the original equation, excuse me. So 22 equals 5 plus 17. And when I simplify 5 plus 17, I do get 22 as an answer. So that one's correct. All right, on to the next one where we have multiplication. Our total for multiplication, that one's also going to be simple. It's going to be the number on the side of the equal sign that's by itself. Okay, so I'm going to draw that total. Now instead of having parts here, label this 35. Instead of having parts, I'm going to have group size, and I'm going to have groups. So one is going to be my number of groups, and then the other one is going to be my group size. So I'm going to make 5 groups, just because that's what's the easiest thing to do. So make that equal in length and then split it into 5 equal sections. And then each group is going to be worth m, so each box is m. Okay, look at what information you have. You have your total, and then you also have your number of groups, which is 5, because you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 groups. So since you know the total, you're always going to use division. If you ever know the total, you're going to divide to help you solve that for that variable. So we're going to do 35. Let's color code this. So 35, our total, divided by the number of groups, 5. And then that's going to give us m. Okay, so if I solve 35 divided by 5, I get 7. So 7 equals m, and I can check my work by substituting in 7, 4 into my original expression. So we have 35 equals 5 times m, which we said is 7. If I simplify this side, I get 35. That's equal, so we're good to go. So let's see, I should probably box these final answers. Let me put them in red here. That's my answer. This is my answer. Or maybe I'll do it in the color it is. There, fancy. Okay, so now on to the subtraction problem where I told you need to be careful about which one you pick as the total. I told you the total is always the number you start with. So in this case, our total is going to be P. So I'm going to draw my model for P. Make sure I label it. Okay, it is subtraction, so we're just going to have parts. One of our parts is going to be 34, and one of our parts is going to be 19. I know I said that backwards, sorry. But there's two parts, so I make my second model. I cut it into two parts. One is 19, and the other is 34. Now this isn't exactly drawn to scale. If I drew it more accurately, 34 would be a little bit of a larger section than 19. Okay, so for this one, we know our parts. Okay, we don't know our total. So we are going to add our parts up because the length of the two parts together is going to be the same length as P. So we're going to do 19 plus 34. Okay, so 9 plus 4 is 13. Carry the 1. 1 plus 1 plus 3 is 5. Okay, so P is going to equal 53. We can check our work by plugging in 53 into the original equation. So 53 minus 19 equals 34. If we simplify 53 minus 19, we do get 34, so we are correct. All right, and then the last one we have a fraction, which is division. So remember here we have to be careful with division problems that we pick the correct total. Always want to pick our dividend, and when we have a division problem in fraction form, the dividend is always the numerator or the number on top. So 45. Oops, I need to change colors. Okay, so let's draw our model for 45. Okay, and now we have to determine the number of groups and the group size. So the easiest thing for the number of groups would be 5. So we'll do that. We'll draw our second model equal in size. I can easily cut this into 5, no big deal, so we'll do that. And then inside each box is going to be X, so that's the group size, X. Okay, again, look at what information you know. We have our total. So that means we're going to have to divide. We have our total and then one of our either group size or group number. We have the group number, so we're going to take 45 and we're going to divide it by the number of groups that we have, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and then that's going to give us what X equals. So 45 divided by 5 gives me 9, so 9 is X. Let me check our work. Plug it into the original equation. Caught myself that time. So 45 divided by 9 equals 5. And that is true. 45 divided by 9 does equal 5. So we are correct. Let's move on to the key point. Okay, it says a bar model can be used to represent and solve any one-step equation. So basically what we've been doing, let's work with the example number 1. So it says, what is the solution of the equation below? 2.5n equals 17.5. So the first thing we do is figure out what is our operation. So let's see, we'll put it in steps over here today. Okay, so step 1 is determine the operation. Okay, in this case, our operation is going to be multiplication, and it's happening here between the 2.5 and the n. Okay, so our operation is going to be multiplication. Okay, so now we determine what is our total. Remember, determine just means to find. So determine total. So looking at our equation, our total is going to be pretty easy. It's going to be behind the equal sign. Or it might be in front of the equal sign. It's just going to be the number that's standing alone. So our total is going to equal 17.5. So let's go ahead and draw that out. label it. Okay, and now this is where these are harder ones like we did yesterday on the level 2 problems. So yeah, we want our now we have to figure out the number of groups. So 3, determine number of groups. Okay, we want our number of groups to be our variable, which in this case is n. So remember I taught you yesterday that when you do this, you draw, so we're going to draw one box, and then we're going to draw an arrow all the way to the end where they would match up if it was, and we're going to label this n. So now we need our group size, and our group size is what's going to be left, the 2.5. So step 4, determine group size. And for us, group size is going to be 2.5. So inside this one box we drew, we're going to draw 2, or we're going to label it 2.5. Okay, now looking at the totals that we have, or looking at the information that you have, we have to determine our operation to help us solve. So step 5, look at given info to determine operation needed to solve for variable. Okay, and for us, since we know the total and we know at least the group size, we can use that information to help us solve for n. So since we know the total, it's going to be division that we use. If we didn't know the total and we knew both the group size and the group number of groups, then we would use multiplication. But if you know the total, it's always division. All right, so I'm going to take my total, 17.5, and I'm going to divide it by my group size, 2.5. Okay, I am going to plug this one into the calculator just because this isn't a lesson on decimal operations, and it's okay if you use a calculator as well. So when you plug in 17.5 divided by 2.5, you get 7. So n is going to equal 7. So we'll check our work. So I guess step 6 would be to solve for variable. And then step 7 would be check work. So it's a lot of steps, but at least they're written out there for you. If I were you, I would make sure I would take a picture of that just so it's something you can, it's a checklist you can use to follow later when you're on your own. So check. We're going to plug in n to our original expression, equation, dang it, I need to get better at that. So 2.5 times n, which is 7, equals 17.5. When I simplify 2.5 times 7, I get 17.5. So this is indeed true. So our final answer is n equals 7. All right, guys, on to number 2. Okay, it says what value of x makes the equation below true? We have x divided by 2.1 equals 1.5. So if we're following our steps over here, the first step is to determine operation. Okay, we have a fraction. So we have a variable being divided by a number right here. Okay, so that means we have a division problem. And with the division problem, our total is always the dividend, which again is the top number. So our total this time is going to be x, the top number. So I draw my model and I label it x. Okay, since we're doing division, we're going to have group size and we're going to have number of groups. So I'm actually going to write this out on the side over here for us. So our little cheat sheet. So our total equals x. Okay, we're going to do number of groups. And then we're going to do group size. So the easiest thing that's going to be to draw for our groups is to draw a representation of 1.5. Okay, so we are going to want our number of groups to be 1.5. Okay, so that would mean that our leftover, which is 2.1, is going to be our group size. Okay, so we draw one box over here, and we're going to label that 2.1.
okay, because that's what one group size is. Okay, but it's not just one, we have 1.5. So what we're going to have to do is draw a half size of that. Okay, are we going to put 2.1 in there? No, because we need to put half of that. Okay, so half of 2.1, so let's see, we're going to have to put half. This was the full one, and here's our half. And half of 2.1 is 1.05. Okay, and so that's our group size. We took care of that. We took care of our number of groups. The only thing is we can't really represent that over and over, so what we'll do is we'll just draw an arrow like if we had a variable. Okay, and we know that this is going to go for 1.5. Okay, so this time I have the number of groups and I have the group size. So this time we're going to use multiplication to solve. So we are going to use multiplication because this time we have the parts. We have the number of groups, which is 1.5, and we have the group size, which is 2.1, and then half of that is 1.05. So we're going to use that information with multiplication to help us solve for x. So I'm going to multiply 1.5 times 2.1. So since we have two different, we have a decimal, we have a fraction, I would like to change them both into the same type of unit. So I'm going to change 1.5 into a decimal just so that way I can enter it into a calculator. So that's going to be 1.5 times 2.1, and that is going to give us x. Okay, so when I multiply 1.5 times 2.1, I get 3.15. So x equals 3.15. And we'll check our work by plugging in x, 3.15, and then solving to see if it's accurate. So if you plug into your calculator 3.15 divided by 2.1, see if you get 1.5. And you do, guys, you get 1.5, which is the same thing as 1.5. Okay, so you are correct. So your final answer is x equals 3.15. All right, guys, feel free to go back and review that. Pause the video as you need. I will see you for our Zoom meeting if you have any questions.